Welcome into the newest episode of Side Mission. 3 of the 4 boys here today. I know we couldn't get Kyle, but there's 3 of us. I think you'll fucking be okay. It's Rusty Ellis, Alex Thacker, we just call him Thacker, and Matt Beck joining us. After not being on the Rainbow Six Extraction episode, he decided to disappoint us that day, but he didn't disappoint us with this one, as Nintendo released a game, and our favorite Nintendo shill decided to join. Wow. I'm just kidding, Matt. I'm playing, bro.
It's all good. It's all good. It's all good fun.
Big Nintendo release, though. Pokemon Legends Arceus. Pretty sure that's how it's pronounced. I've heard it both ways, and for some reason, just nobody on the internet likes to agree. That's just kind of the internet in 2022. Nobody likes to agree on anything. Big release, though. It's been billed as the, I guess pun intended, the evolution of Pokemon games as we know them. A lot of people have called it Pokemon Breath of the Wild. Obviously a joke there with Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. After playing this game for as long as all 3 of us have, I think that the one thing we can all agree on when it comes to this game is that, well, one, there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to talk about with this game. A lot of things that are done differently. A lot of things that are maybe you're not done quite as old school Pokemon fans remember them or know them as. I think that we can all agree, though, this is a really, really good game, potentially a great game, but it's got some nagging flaws. So before we get deep into those, let's kind of talk about our first impressions. Let's talk a little bit about what jumped out at us first in this game. Matt, like I said, you're the big Nintendo fan here, so I'll let you start. I know we never let you go first in these episodes anyways. So Matt, tell me, what was one of kind of the first things that stuck out to this game, good or bad for you?
So if I want to start off with the good things right quick, I'll say having a storyline opening up with the way that Pokemon Legends did, I was kind of into it at first, like this whole time traveling mechanic thing going on, and like Arceus talking to you, you're just kind of like, oh man, God's talking to me. This is so cool. And then
it's kind of trippy, right? A little bit trippy, right?
It was pretty trippy. Oh yeah. And next thing you know, you're just waking up on a beach, meeting the professor. You're catching, helping him catch the starters that you get to pick out in this game. And then you get introduced into the hub world, which is this game's version of Jubilife City. So if anyone's played Diamond and Pearl, then you know Jubilife City.
I feel like an idiot. I didn't even fucking notice that. I feel like an idiot.
Just remember, everywhere you go in this game is literally almost a one-to-one map make of Sinnoh, as we know it from Diamond and Pearl.
It is.
Which I love the attention to detail in this game, all the way from like Snow Point Temple, Eternia Forest. I don't know, I probably didn't say that right. I butchered that word, Eternia Forest.
Well, we're all a bunch of degenerates, so I don't think it matters.
And even down to the fact that a lot of the characters you meet in this game are pretty much ancestors to characters from Diamond and Pearl. But I also noticed a good number of characters who had ancestry to characters from even Black and White. So I was like, hey, Game Freak, hint, hint at a Gen 5 remake. Just don't let the people who did Diamond and Pearl do it.
That's cold.
We actually want to see that. But now, what really stuck out to me in the negatives, Game Freak, you have one of the biggest selling IPs in the world. You have Pokemon. You are literally making billions of dollars like on this franchise every year. But the laziness, like, it's just unfortunate the fact that this open world could be so beautiful, could be fully realized. We've seen it done with fan-made games, and it's just upgrade your engine. Like, it's a great concept. I love what you're doing here. But the trees are terrible. Like, they almost have absolutely no foliage to them. And then the water looks like PlayStation 2 water. Like, I really hate comparing that. Like, I'm just saying.
So PlayStation 1 lava.
Yeah.
And, like, I'm just saying, like, off in the distance, like, we touched on this. The draw distance is so bad. Like, say if there's like a flying type Pokemon like Staravia off in the background, it's literally going at 2 frames a second. It's wings up, wings down, wings up, wings down, and it looks so bad. And there's absolutely no textures. The Pokemon look plastic. They don't look alive. Like, some of these Pokemon, they're supposed to have fur. They don't look like they have fur. They look like they're literally made out of Legos, like plastic pieces. And I just really want to see Game Freak get a budget going on here. Like I get maybe you're pressed for time because Pokemon being the franchise that it is, you're probably on a deadline because you have to meet up with certain specifics with that the Pokemon company wants, like the anime. Like Game Freak, you don't delay your games. You've never delayed a Pokemon game, and I think maybe it's time to start doing that.
I want to point this out because you brought up an interesting point real quick. Uh, Not only does Game Freak doesn't just have access to a one of the biggest franchises in the world, they have access to literally the biggest franchise in the world. Pokemon is the highest grossing franchise in entertainment. Period. You know, and that includes, you know, you look at like Marvel Studios and Disney, like Pokemon grosses more than
No,
either
no,
of
no. Be
them.
careful.
Like that's
Disney might try to go buy Pokemon.
not a chance of that happening in hell. Anyways, but we'll talk more about laziness because there is more to talk about on that front, and I know that we all three have different things we want to talk about in that regard. Thacker, what about you though? Like, what stuck out? Because obviously, for all the negatives Matt did just mention, there are positives, and I think that it starts with the mechanics.
And that's actually the thing. These mechanics brought something different that jumped out immediately to me. Right? But just between the moves, not only being able to stick with your traditional move style, but also being able to have these new mechanics such as agile style and strong style. Those two small details in the move mechanics was beautiful, along with actually having a move library instead of just having the flat out
Yeah,
your Pokemon levels up, they get a move. You can either use it or not. You actually get a library for your move. So when it learns a move, if you don't want to use it, you can go back and use it when you want to.
Yeah, instead of it being kind of that use it or lose it kind of style, right?
Exactly.
yeah,
One of the other things, evolutions. We all know Pokemon games have been out for 23 years. And it is something incredible to now actually be able to choose when your Pokemon evolves instead
hmm
of, hey, you hit this level, your Pokemon wants to evolve. Press B to cancel it. Now you actually get to full on choose when it evolves. And with that, I found something interesting. Some of the Pokemon that you need to trade for leveling up and evolving, they added an item so you don't have to now. You now just have to use a link cable item to evolve these Pokemon, which brought something beautiful into it because now you can actually play the game fully, complete the Pokedex, and not have to rely on, oh, well, I have to trade my Pokemon, which might be 100 IV, to somebody random or to my friend who might or might not screw me over.
I'll be honest, I had no
Um,
idea that was even an item. I got to be honest.
yeah, like it was something interesting that I found out, and the second I did, I was like, oh, I got to try this. So first and foremost, I took my Alpha Machoke and threw it with the link cable, and I got the Alpha Machamp, and that thing is massive. I'm talking about swole.
oh, swole.
But finally, like one of the biggest things that popped out to me were the shinies. We got it kind of in Pokemon Let's Go, Pikachu and Eevee, but it got brought back to Pokemon are actually shiny in the wild, and you can see them being shiny. Right? We still get the animation, the stars, and everything when they are shiny, but now we actually get to find them shiny. So for those who are shiny hunters, have fun. At the same time, pay attention to your outbreak zones because those are actually going to help you a lot more. Negative things that stood out were, like Matt pointed out, some of the graphics, but furthermost, um, just the fact that this game is heavy story based, but they throw in one too many tutorials for me.
Yeah,
Yeah, I feel that.
hmm
And just to touch up on something that Matt just added, by the way, one of the ancestors that you touched up on from Black and White,
yeah.
that's actually not an ancestor, Matt. Ingo is actually another time traveler who is from the subway station from when you fight him in Black and White.
You're
Ingo, that's
right. I
right.
didn't even think
Yeah,
about that. You're right. He
So
mentions
if
that.
you notice, He's got the same moves and everything. The pointing the
Yeah.
finger at you with the pointing
Mhm.
down. It's the same character. Go back and look at some of the screenshots of Black and White with his fight. He's having the same poses.
I should have known that. I put hundreds of hours in Black and White originally.
But yeah, hey Rusty, what about you, man? What stood out the most to you, dude?
You know, I will say, I've probably, of the three of us, I've been the most critical, we'll say, of this game. Because, first of all, I think it's worth pointing out, I love Pokemon. If you got your bingo cards and you've got Rusty about to mention his Eevee tattoos on there, get ready because you're about to fill that space up.
Hey, you're not the only one with Pokemon tattoos. I got you too.
But that's the thing is, like, I have 5 Pokemon tattoos and I love Pokemon. The biggest negatives is I wish that they would take a few more risks. I'll get specifically into that later in this episode. We're going to talk about that more, about kind of what risks we'd like to see them take moving forward. I've said that my opinion overall in this game is that and I think that there are a lot of people that think this as well, it's really good. It's a good first draft. So, like, think back to when you're in school, you're writing an essay for class. You know, your first draft is never really your best work, at least for me, as someone who I love writing. It never was my best work. That's kind of the same thing here. It's kind of the same thing here, where I feel like maybe if, Matt mentioned, pushing this game back, what if you'd push this game back to maybe May?
Yeah.
And maybe worked on it a little bit more? It would have been more polished, would have been, ready. And maybe we wouldn't have some of the negative feelings that we have about it. So, for me, the biggest negative has got to be the performance. Obviously, the Switch is not the most powerful machine. You compare it to, the PS5, the Series SX. Really, honestly, you could compare it to a base PS4 and a base Xbox One, and both of those machines are still way more powerful than the Switch. But it can handle better than this. I mean, we've seen good-looking games on the Switch. We've seen The Witcher 3. We've seen the new Doom games. Metroid Dread was a very good-looking game. Pokemon Sword and Shield, for the most part, looked good. Like, there have been good-looking games on the Switch. This is not one of them.
No.
Which is why I've said that if you're one of those people that is calling this Pokemon Breath of the Wild, I feel like that's almost a slight to Breath of the Wild, because Breath of the Wild looked a lot better than this.
It did.
And Breath of the Wild was a lot earlier in the Switch's lifespan.
Like that was also a Wii U game.
Yeah, it's a Wii U game.
In there.
It's a Wii U game, exactly, man.
I actually have a question on that.
Okay, what?
So, Matt, you have an OLED.
I do.
Rusty, do you have one?
I do not. Mine is a normal... mine's a version 2 Switch. It's not like the original one that was released. It was the improved one with the better battery life and all that. That's what mine is.
So, Rusty and I don't have an OLED. Matt, you do. And I know the graphics on that are better. Even still, would you say this looked the same way as it does on my Switch?
So, no, I'm going to say this. Graphics are not better. That is a misconception. The Switch OLED is literally has no more capabilities graphically than a original Switch.
Isn't the main thing that it's just brighter? Isn't it mainly just that it's brighter, or am I wrong?
Yes, it's the fact that it is brighter. The colors pop more. That's really what. That's really all I can tell you. Is it's brighter, the colors pop more, and everything just looks more crisp and clear. That's it. Graphically, performance-wise, no, there is no difference.
Yeah, so my biggest thing that I want to point out graphically, and I know we joked about this beforehand, I'm going to reference one of my favorite YouTubers, Beat 'em Ups here. In his video, he talks about how, like, if you want to see something bad, take your character in this game and, like, take a couple steps into, like, a pond or something, and the outline of your character starts just freaking out and going crazy. The outline, like, around the sides of your character, it just starts freaking out and glitching and going all buggy, and it's one of those things where, how in 2022 does this still happen? Especially, again, we mentioned, you have, if you are Game Freak, you literally have access to what should be a damn near unlimited budget. Like, Nintendo would probably give you whatever you wanted to get this done. Like, I don't know how that happens. But I don't want to just rag on the game. So, one thing I will say, and I think, Matt, you may have alluded to it a little bit, the difference in catching Pokemon in this time around. I like this a lot more than normal.
Yeah.
Um, it feels like this is actually how Pokemon is done in the anime, where you see them out in the wild, you can sneak up on them, you can just throw the ball at them and try to catch them. You can battle them and try to weaken them, and maybe for Alpha Pokemon, you have to do that. You have to weaken them
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
But I like that you could literally, if you wanted to, if you see a Pokemon, if you can get to it before it aggroes, you can literally just chuck a ball at it. And
Yeah.
honest to
I actually
God,
want to touch upon.
and I'll let you. I'll kind of let you touch on what you wanted to touch on there, Matt. But
Okay.
I found it funny how that for me worked almost just as often as sneaking up on them did.
Yeah.
Like I'd run up on them, just throw the ball real quick before they aggroed, and it would catch them. It's kind of funny in that aspect. But Matt, I know you wanted to elaborate on something. Go on ahead.
Well, as far as the Pokemon in the wild goes, I just want to elaborate on a couple of things. The characteristics of the Pokemon, I can fully understand. Like the future of Pokemon is, we are never going to have a full Pokedex. Like we're not going to have like over 900 Pokemon in a single game. Like those days are over with. But it is giving them more time to work on animations, which was touched upon in Sword and Shield, as Game Freak gave the reason as to why they were cutting out so many different Pokemon from the Sword and Shield decks. And I didn't really see that much work put into it outside of the camping. But in this game, I feel like that this is where they were really touching upon animations, because certain Pokemon actually react to the trainer. Like I think that their hearing is way too good, but look, we have items that can fix that. Um, I love that some Pokemon will react to seeing you and they'll run away, which is actually kind of very based off of which Pokemon are matches their characteristics. They even tend to mention the Pokemon called Glameow is very timid around humans. So if it feels like it's around, they'll run away. Another one I want to touch upon is Murkrow. Murkrow is basically a a Pokemon that is, always with a bunch of other Murkrow. And I feel like what's really cool is when one detects you, it actually calls for others, and they all basically will start swarming you. Um, some of the other animations I've seen from some Pokemon are just they're just walking around, not really doing much. This feel they'll be like rolling around on the beach, which is very much what they do, based off of like Pokedex entries from previous games. So there's some things here that's really cool. Some things are not. One thing that I think is really weird is sometimes a Pokemon can just jump up into a tree. I've seen this happen, and I was like, "Wait, what?"
It happened to me with
Like,
my giant Rapidash, Matt. Happened to me
yeah,
with my giant Rapidash. Jumped up in a
yeah,
tree, and
yeah,
for
happened to
some
you.
reason that it just sat there.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't know why the tree didn't catch on fire. Game Freak,
yeah.
what's up?
Um, as far as the catching mechanics go, I think what's really cool is if you do sneak up behind them and you toss a Pokeball at them, and it it takes them by surprise, you have a higher chance to catch them. Or sometimes it'll catch them, or they'll pop out a Pokeball. It'll sometimes instantly initiate a battle, and then you just go and take it from there. The free roaming around in Pokemon battles is really awesome, which I hope to see in Gen 9 as a trainer, just being able to run around, and you can even stand in front of a enemy Pokemon as it's attacking yours and even take damage from it. Why would you do that? I don't know. You must really love your little computer generated little buddy there. And there's so many great things here. I just want to see it fully realized with Gen 9, like it's the stepping stones. I want Gen 9 or whatever the next Legends game, whatever Game Freak is planning on doing next, to be the the final, like, this is what we have been building up, starting off with Sword and Shield's DLC. Like Frozen Tundra was a lot like this, leading up to the wild area and Sword and Shield. Like they're baby stepping it, but they got to fully commit to this. Well, to this idea, to this realization that we want a fully live, like that feels alive Pokemon world to explore and catch these Pokemon that we all love.
Oh, I 100% agree, man. I think that a lot of this is them kind of just like dipping their toes in the water and kind of testing, seeing how it feels. No, like dive all in, go all in on something like this. Like,
Yeah.
that's a good transition point for our like the next part of this. Again, there are a lot of things to like about this game, and I really don't want people to think that we hate this game because we don't. I know that all three of us have really enjoyed it, but there are some very real flaws to talk about here. We've mentioned laziness a couple times, so I feel like that's a good place to start. I'll start with what I thought was lazy. Um, did anybody else feel like they were playing kind of like a modded version of Sword and Shield? Because it feels like every asset from that game was used. Like, instead of creating new assets, it felt like every asset from Sword and Shield was reused. Character animations, environments, the trees, the fucking trees.
Trees with no texture, no foliage.
Well, exactly, bro. Like, it's one of
model.
those. I sat there and I was like, I feel like I'm playing a modded version of Sword and Shield, and like that's a good and bad thing because Sword and Shield I think is a good Pokemon game, but it wasn't perfect. And that just again, it feels lazy. It doesn't. It feels like taking a shortcut where you don't have to, because again, Game Freak, you are the main developer. You're the developer for Pokemon. You're not going up against a competitor right now. You're not going up against somebody else. Like, it's not like Call of Duty and Battlefield from back in the day on 360 and PS3. It's not like that. You don't have that competitor. And I swear to God, somebody's gonna say Digimon. I'm gonna tell him to stop fucking smoking. But
No, it'll be Matt saying Yu-Gi-Oh.
Digimon are the champions.
oh my God. But
God, you did not. I will come in there and smack you one of these days.
anyways,
Ooh,
But-
a live action brawl on a podcast. Let's go,
All right, Matt, turn that camera on.
bro.
Ursa Ring, I didn't hear no damn bell. Anyways, okay. Anyways, back on the farm.
You mean the pasture?
Anyways, but for real, like back on it seriously, it feels like there's a lot of reused assets here, and when they don't look good, and they also look like that you've used them already. Like, people can say what they want about the chibi style of the Diamond and Pearl remakes, but at least those weren't just straight reused assets. At least they had to recreate those. Lazy as they might have been for different reasons, it just feels like Game Freak again. They got lazy with that. And Thacker, I think this is a good spot to transition to you here, because I know something else that bugged you. It bugged me too, and it's lazy as fuck. So go ahead.
Guys, this is a heavy story-based game. Agreed?
Yes. 100%.
Why in the world do we not still have voice acting? 23 years of Pokemon games, and you give us the heaviest story-based game, and we don't have voice acting. Game Freak, come on.
I also want to point out one thing that I do and have an issue with about this right here. Game Freak, can we commit to cutscenes, please? It is 2022. You do not have to black out the screen and have text on the screen, and then something happens. Even when a character just simply opens a door, black box, and then transitions. Like, this is so lazy.
You mean to tell me we can't animate that? Like, for real? Like, we can't
Seriously.
animate a door opening? Like, we can't animate... And listen, man, we talked about the overworld, and Matt, I really want you to do a deep dive here on the open world, on the overworld, because you've had a lot to say about it. But how did we feel as a whole about it? Really, instead of it being an open world, it's more or less a loading screen where you pick where you want to spawn instead of just going out into the world. Again, if this game is going to get called Breath of the Wild Pokemon Breath of the Wild, it feels like a slight to Breath of the Wild, because Breath of the Wild didn't do that. And I say that as somebody that I've been fairly critical of Zelda games, because I'm not a huge fan of them. But Matt, like,
the game feels more like Monster Hunter meets Pokemon
It's Pokemon Legends Rise.
Yeah, it
It's not
really
Breath of
is.
the Wild.
It really is. It really really is. But it's just I Matt, I'll let you take the overworld from here. I thought that was just lazy. I was like, this isn't really even open world. This is more or less again Pokemon Legends Rise.
Right. So I'm going to touch upon a few things when it comes to the open world. Um, I think that if you are going to do an open world game, whether it be in the vein of Breath of the Wild, whether in the vein of something like Monster Hunter that's in sections, that's like I just wish everything just flowed better. Like the loading screens, it gets really annoying anytime you practically do something just to go into a different area. I mean, I like the variety in areas. Like, I think you have basically swamplands, you have open, grassy plains, you have snow-capped mountains of, Mount Coronet. You have like a desert like area. I think that a lot of that's really cool, but it's like, and I'm not even going to pick upon the fact that I think it's empty. Like, yeah, occasionally Pokemon do pop up, but I mean, you're not going to walk outside and instantly see an animal as soon as you walk out. Now, I do think that the realism is there are birds everywhere. When you first walk out, you're going to see starlies, you're going to see Staravias, like flying around everywhere. And there's like a couple of other really cool areas too, like I think it's called Cobalt Beach or something like that. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Something like that.
But like there's this really cool area where you go, there's a volcano off in the distance that you can swim on once you unlock the rideable Basque Legion. And then you have like an area that's basically like a shit graveyard, which at night ghost type Pokemon come out, which, and again, I really think that that's cool that at night certain Pokemon show up like ghost types, and during the day um Pokemon like and bug types will pop out that sometimes you won't see at night, which that's goes back to the whole day and night cycle that a lot of Pokemon games have done in the past.
But we also get those types at night too, which is nice.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Um I think like when you pull up the map and you see like the areas, and some of them are recognizable for people who play Diamond Pearl, and they recognize the map of Sinnoh. So again, touching on that, I think that's cool. But like, I feel like you're in a skybox. If anyone knows what that means, it's basically like there's lots of places you could go, but they do the whole invisible wall saying it's like you can't go here type of things. Nothing drives me crazier than when something does that. It's like in Assassin's Creed when you start to do something like that. At least their explanation is you're something like the Animus, which can't generate that area. So it's like, okay, so at least they give an explanation. But in this, it's like Arceus is telling you, you can't come out here. The heck?
That's a reference back to like Professor Oak going, you can't do that here.
You can't ride your bike in a Pokemon Center. What's wrong with you? And I think like the Pokemon that pop up in the overworld really do match their environments. Like in the ice world, you obviously got ice-type Pokemon, Snorunt, Glalie, Snover. And then you have like
how come we
volcano
got
area.
At a beach?
Yeah, exactly. So I think that they did a really good job at realizing the Pokemon and where the Pokemon would be placed. I mean, I'm not quite sure why there's a bunch of Machops and Machokes running around on the beach. I guess you're just getting their fitness on. People like to take runs on the beach, whatever.
I will say, I think I can actually explain that one, though, because if you go out to, like, Muscle Beach in California, like, that's one of, like, the most famous, like, outdoor gyms, ever.
Okay.
So I think that that's actually a little explainable, and that's a weird random fact that I know. I don't know how I know that, but like, that's just, like, that's actually, like, a thing. So I think that that's how you would explain that.
Yeah.
But like I said, how would you explain an ice type such as the Steel evolution?
Well, seals. Well, because seals normally, like, seals being on a beach is not like weird though. I don't think that's weird.
No, it's what you'll see. Yeah.
I mean, I think
I don't know. I think it would do better if you had like Steel on the like Snow Peak beach.
It would make sense, but if you played Ruby and Sapphire on the more like waterfront area,
that's where Steel would spawn.
That's where you were running to Steel.
Yeah,
there was no ice or anything like that. So they kind of stuck with that whole thing. But yes, I wish if you're going to do a game like this, fully commit to it. I think a lot of my issues also come from the fact that before you get certain rideable Pokemon, you can't go in certain areas, and it's so annoying until you eventually get a Pokemon called spoiler Sneasler, who is the evolution of the new uh, Hisui form of Sneasel. Um, they introduced Wordier, which I think once you unlock that, then the open world is almost like nothing. You know, you can just run around everywhere. And then
See, I feel
obviously
that way more with
Basculation.
like Braviary's new form.
Yeah, I actually think that was really cool. I mean, obviously to fly, that's your glider because every open world game needs a glider.
Pokemon Breath of the Wild. Pokemon.
They tried. They tried.
Legion's water transportation.
Yeah, but I mean, even if I would not have minded if they wanted to add a stamina bar. If I could climb up, like when I can in Breath of the Wild, if I want to climb up to something, I can do that. But at least they eventually introduced that Pokemon that you can do that. So
Okay, but
I'll just leave it around that. Yeah.
This game still feels like it has a stamina bar without giving us a stamina bar.
It really does.
Pokemon game we've ever had. You get the running shoes or the rollerblades for the one weird occasion we got them, and you could run nonstop. There was no breath period. There was no time to stop and catch your breath. You could nonstop run. Heck, Sword and Shield, you could still do that. It wasn't a fast run, but it was still a run.
The only thing that's stopping me from catching my breath is when an alpha Pokemon sees me. I'm running.
But like that's the thing. This game still feels like it has a stamina bar where you have to take your breath. And even still, we get the lovely Dark Souls feel of once you lose breath, if you want to move around a lot, just roll.
Yeah.
I would like to point out that Rusty was not the one that mentioned From Software this time around. So if that was on your bingo card, you don't get to use that, suckers. So, anyways, I think that a lot of what we've talked about there, I think that we agree on a lot of that. A lot of those issues are, I think, pretty standard fare for what people have experienced playing this game. I will say, and this is the last thing I'm going to say about this feels, most terrifying experience I've had at this point, running into that fucking Alpha Walren on the because that dude, he one-shot my entire party.
If you go a little bit further to the left, you can find an Alpha Auxiliary.
And I was just like, this is miserable. This sucks.
No, what really scared me about the Alpha was literally I see a giant Snorlax. I'm like, oh, I want it. And it just gives you that evil look, and then all of a sudden it just starts charging. You're like, what does it do? Oh, I know what it's doing. Oh, I gotta go. And it literally, that was a terrifying thing, because next thing I know is Hyper Beam straight to my face.
Hyper Beam.
And I was like, oh my God.
I think the funniest moment I've had, and Matt was in, I think he was at a party with me for this, is when I caught my Alpha Rapidash. The first time it attacked, it used Hyper Beam, and I was like, oh. So, for the first time ever, Rapidash knows Hyper Beam. Great. Just one-shots my first two Pokemon. I'm like, great. Hyper Beam out of nowhere. Had no idea you could learn that move. Cool. Thanks, Pokemon. So, I think that that's, I think there are a lot of flaws in this game, but let's get on a more positive note, and let's talk some of the strengths, because, we mentioned our first impressions earlier, and there were a lot of things that we liked. Thacker, you mentioned the evolution and the move library and all that. Matt, you've mentioned how Pokemon react to you in the wild. I love the catching mechanics.
Yeah.
I feel like there's strengths here, and that there's a good game and potentially, again, a great game to be appreciated here. It's just got to fix a couple things. That's my thing, is that at this point in time, if this game, again, had a couple months maybe to just, be kind of, polished up a little bit, I think we'd be talking about this as what it was advertised as. The next big step forward for Pokemon. Right now, for me, it feels like more of a couple small steps forward instead of that big leap. That's where I come down on that right now.
True. Very true.
Let's talk biggest positives, though. What's the biggest positive in the game, Matt, for you?
I think that this new concept of adding something like a boss fight is kind of cool. When they introduced noble Pokemon, which majority of them are these new evolutions from previous gens. Like the first one you encounter is Cleavor. Like I kind of dig that whole thing. Like I know it might not be for everybody, but it
Yeah.
adds some of them are difficult. Like a lot of the I think one of my positives about this game is it doesn't feel like it's too easy. Like it doesn't feel like I'm just going to be able to breeze through a lot of these, like especially for people who want to catch all the Pokemon. Like to in order for you to actually meet Arceus and battle him and catch him, you have to fill up the Pokedex. So it does add a bit of a challenge with that. And I think the introduction with as far as filling out your Pokedex is it's not just simple as catching that Pokemon one time and then if you run into it again, you just run. Like you have what is called research, and it actually has like little check boxes where you can do specific things like use certain moves, catch a certain number, defeat a certain number, catch it without being noticed. I actually like the fact that the Pokemon in the wild just don't feel like a one-time thing. Like you can't just encounter it, catch it one time, and be done with it. Like I think that whole thing really adds to the depth of catching Pokemon.
So you had me all the way up until you said that the game wasn't easy.
Really? Okay. Yeah.
And I won't say that the entire game is easy. I think the boss fights are. Well, I think that it's a breath of fresh air to have boss fights.
Yeah. Yeah. That's more so what I was getting
I
at.
think the boss fights outside of Electrode for me, the boss fights are kind of a joke.
That
Wait until you get
one.
to Avalar.
Like I don't. I don't think they're that hard, and that's the thing is I don't think there's much of a challenge when most of it is dodge attack, spam healing or the bombs at them. Spam that.
Yeah,
Eventually
yeah.
they stagger and you battle them. And I even Electrode. I mean, he only knocked me out once. So it's I don't think the boss fights are that hard. I think that it's a breath of fresh air, and that's a positive. Is that
Yeah.
it's certainly different from gyms. But I will say I wish that there had been a little bit more diversity as far as what you had to do in each fight, or items you had to use in each fight.
Yeah. Yeah.
It feels like the only difference really is okay, what type advantage do I need to go into this with?
Right. I will touch on one more thing as far as the difficulty goes. I have never had my whole party get wiped out as many times in this game as I have any other Pokemon game. Like constantly getting my team wiped out, which not used to that.
And I'll say this because I've noticed that too. I've noticed that too, and I want to say this. It almost feels like your Pokemon are glass cannons.
They really are.
It feels like they deal a lot of damage, but they also take a lot. And one thing you mentioned, Matt, was every alpha Pokemon seemingly knowing Double Edge.
Yes.
Or Hyper Beam.
Or Hyper Beam. A ton of them know Hyper Beam. Like, at least with Parasect, it made sense, because I knew that Parasect could learn that move.
Double Edge is more of a pain, because if you're actually trying to catch these alpha Pokemon, obviously you're going to want to weaken them. Well, they're just going to Double Edge themselves, and then that's it.
Oh, dude, Scyther, my Alpha Scyther that I evolved into Cleavor, he used some move that poisoned himself.
Oh my god!
And so by the time in the fight that the poison took effect, I only had one shot to catch him, and he jumped out. And I was like, well, this blows. I'm not a fan of that, but I will say that the boss fights are interesting, and they add a new wrinkle. Not quite to the level of maybe other game franchises out there that have boss fights, but I think that there's something there. There's a base there, and that's at least going forward, they know that. I think a lot of people liked the boss fights, so I think they know they have something good moving forward. Thacker, biggest positive on your end?
Oh man, I've actually got a couple on this point. So, biggest thing is I love the Easter eggs in this. It just brings all of Pokemon past into this game. For instance, if you're wanting Manaphy or Fionn, you literally have to have played Diamond and Pearl to be able to do it, because the research for it, or the research task, I should say, is Legends of the Sea. And they have no inklings or anything for that within Arceus. So with that, you actually have to have gone to the library in Diamond and Pearl, read the book on it, found out what you need, and be able to get those two Pokemon. It was a beautiful homage to it, and I probably just butchered the ever loving fuck out of that word. But with that, the Easter eggs are beautiful with it. On top of that, one really nice thing is, and you guys touched up on it some, the gym battles not being there was beautiful on the simple fact of we did not have to worry about, hey, I have to go defeat Brock to be able to have level 20 Pokemon. No, now it's I have to do X amount of research and get my first star with Galactic Galact
Team Galaxy, yeah.
Team Galaxy, right? So it was one of those where once you get to and I've kind of seen this, once you get to about 5-6 stars, you're able to just catch anything and it listen to you.
Yeah.
And it was nice to be able to do that versus having to go through these tedious gym battles. And heck, on the battles, it's nice not to have to worry about random NPC having a full 6-person or 6 Pokemon team.
Or an NPC with 6 Magikarp in a row. That's always fun.
That's my favorite part of the game.
You leave my Magikarp alone because he turned into a god. I think that might be my next tattoo is Magikarp. I will be god.
But we all will miss Trainer Joey in his shorts because they're so comfy.
No,
I don't miss him. Him and his Rattata or whatever. I don't miss that.
It's Rattata, yeah.
I don't miss that. I don't miss that even for a second. You know, he can go to hell. So
for real.
But
I mean, with that, it's just the positives on this do outweigh the flaws, the negatives, whatever you want to call it. Because Game Freak, even though yes, they should have taken a little bit more time and finally given us voice acting, they still did really well with what they gave us.
It's still fun. It's still a fun game.
I think that leaves us with a question then. So how ultimately, and you can think about your answers. I'll give mine first. You guys have time to kind of think about yours. How do we think this best changed the Pokemon formula? Because, or how does this transform the formula moving forward? Because what I've said, the thing I think I loved most in this game was the mission structure. I like that it was actually structured like an open world game, but it felt like they didn't go all in on that. I would love going forward. I hope if there's anything that's changed, I hope, and I really mean that I hope that they do this, I hope they take more risks. And what I mean by that is maybe instead of turn-based combat, and I've used this example a couple times, I would love to see maybe a free-form combat or a Final Fantasy 15 style combat where you throw your Pokemon out, you've got button commands for their attacks, and as the trainer, you can throw berries to distract the wild Pokemon. You know, you can throw other items that are useful in that scenario. If you need to heal your Pokemon, you can,
or even just more real-time fighting.
Yeah, like I feel like there's a reason why you can move around in fights on this game. It almost feels like they were experimenting to see how much people would do that. I would like to see the turn-based more or less. Let's overhaul that. Let's overhaul the combat system. Let's try something completely new. Yes, it's risky. It's risky as hell. It is very, very risky.
Or even do what Final Fantasy VII Remake did. Give you the option.
Exactly.
Like, you could keep the turn-based if you like that style, or you can try it new and have more real time.
I think that if they were to overhaul and do a completely new combat system, honest to God, I think that would win a lot of people over. I know it's risky, but if you do it the right way, that's massive reward. It's high risk, high reward there. So that's kind of where I'm at as far as evolution of gameplay. Thacker, what do you think? How does this best change up the Pokemon formula moving forward?
Oh Lord, you definitely got me off guard with this one. Man, honestly, this one brings a lot more to it. Like, it no longer feels like the constant level grinding, and it feels like it's more so grinding to find out more about Pokemon. And if we could get more of that and see more of that, it would be beautiful. Even with a new region, which is supposedly undocumented. It brings that, but also, as Pokemon has done every time, they have given us a new kind of mechanic, being the Mega forms or the Dynamax forms, or now the Alpha forms. I would like to see more of, say, we get the next Pokemon game. I would love for us to see, like, just an Easter egg of like an alpha Pokemon, whether it just be as simple as my boy Dunsparce. But at the same time, or actually, let me rephrase that: my boy Sableye, since I got the tattoo of it.
That's fair.
Um, but I would love to just see an Easter egg of an alpha Pokemon. It's one of those where this game brings so much to the future of Pokemon, whether it be we get more of a Breath of the Wild feel. And they did really well with the open world here for that, is it opened the door up for Breath of the Wild Pokemon. We got the good stepping stone of where we are now with the Monster Hunter version of Pokemon, but we could go further with that. We can take that risk and actually get a full open world where instead of just having to go down a path like we have been getting, or having to go back to home base to pick a new location, we could get that full open world.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful concept. It's going to be high risk because for the diehard Pokemon fans, it's going to be like, I don't know how I feel about this in the beginning, but I feel like if Game Freak takes their time, they could honestly blow out even more competition that they have with Nintendo games, bringing in more open worldness to it.
Matt, what about you?
I'll say this: what this game does, and what I want to see for in the future Pokemon games, is this game has so many things to do. The post game content, Pokemon falls very flat when it comes to beating the main story and having nothing to do afterwards except complete your Pokédex. Do this. This game goes on that as far as like encountering legendaries that you don't get to really encounter during the main quest. And then on top of that, I love the introduction of requests. Some of them are really nice. Some of them are very tedious, but it's still something new that we haven't really yet seen in Pokemon, because I'm probably sitting on like 50 or 60 requests right now. And then the introduction of collecting things, like I really like that. They have one where it might not be for everybody, but you get to capture all the unknown, and they're in just random locations. You might spot one. There are instant catches, so just throw a Pokeball at it and you got it. They also have these wisps that lead to, if anyone knows who Spirit Tomb is, that you can
I would
complete
hope
that
so.
quest. Yeah, I would hope so too. That you can complete that request. On top of that, I think the crafting is also something I really love seeing. Now, I don't want my bag to be limited. I don't want to spend all my money trying to upgrade my bag. That's another
Yep.
True
my
game.
complaints on this game is the fact that on an open world game, you're going to collect a lot of stuff because you want to craft. The crafting is cool. Like there's collecting berries, um, getting certain materials to make the Pokeballs with, which I think that's really cool. Is that you can craft your own Pokeballs. But it just falls under the problem that you are so limited on how much you can carry. I'm constantly having to drop stuff because I'm finding something new, or I'm finding a quest related item. But just the fact that they finally made this game so much more than just the campaign is what I want to see going forward with this series.
Yeah, I think that ultimately with Pokemon Legends Arceus, I think that there's a lot of positives and there's a lot of good things happening in this game. There are flaws. I think if they correct them, this is a great game. That's where I'm at with it. We talked last week when me and Thacker recorded Rainbow Six Extraction about where that game might land, later on down the line as far as top 10. And it's, we're in February. It's way too early to plan out or to look ahead and see where this might land. But I think this is a quality game that if you love Pokemon, I think that this is going to be a big breath of fresh air for anybody
Yeah,
who wants to play a Pokemon game. This is a breath of fresh air. It's definitely different enough from the main line of games that it's worth checking out, and there's plenty to do. So I think that it's a quality game. hopefully it lays the groundwork for the next game we get, and they go a little bit more all in on that. But that is going to do it for this episode of Side Mission. Follow us on Twitter at Side Mission Pod. You can follow me, me, Matt, and Thacker while we're here. Kyle runs the Side Mission Twitter. We don't trust him enough to run his own, so that's pretty fair. But that's going to do it for us. Alex Thacker, Matt Beck, I'm Rusty Ellis. Thanks for listening.